It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn, Vincent. We begin in a living room in Southfield. 6 people around a table in February, trying to figure out what to do about the federal lawyers who had just leased office space 5 minutes from their neighborhood. Those lawyers work for the Office of the Principal Legal Advisor. They argue deportation cases on behalf of ICE. They are the legal architecture behind immigration raids. The building is One Town Square, an 18-story office tower on the Lodge Freeway. The owner, a company called Redico, says the lease prohibits law enforcement or detention on the premises. The neighbors say that's not enough. And the number of them pushing back is growing. 6 people in a living room became 150 at a recent rally. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, State Senator Jeremy Moss, and faith leaders showed up. At the center of all this is Lauren Fink. She co-founded the Southfield Neighbors Action Committee in that living room in Southfield with her husband, Cameron. And she joins me now. Lauren, welcome.
Hi, Robyn. Thank you so much for having me.
So you found out that lawyers for ICE have leased space 5 minutes from your home back in February. Take me back to that day. What did you do?
Yeah, so in the beginning, we didn't actually know who exactly was in the space. We had to do quite a bit of digging to figure out what the space was being used for. But there was an article in Wired, and it was talking about these odd leases from the federal government, the GSA, that were, it turned out, being used for various ICE activities, some of them detention, some office. And I read, through the article, and I went to, there's a table in there, and I searched for Michigan just out of curiosity, and Southfield came up. And I was just completely shocked because, to be completely honest, I think no business in their right mind would think that renting space to ICE or any agency affiliated with ICE would be a good idea in Southfield. And I think the 150 of us who showed up at our most recent rally really underscore that point.
Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib put out a statement about this. State Senator Jeremy Moss did too. Elected officials were speaking out. Why wasn't that enough for you? Why did you feel like the neighbors themselves had to be in the room?
I think, partly that's just how our community is. I think, too, it's just knowing how valuable that community voice is in conversations like this. The company, Redico, that has rented this space to ICE's lawyers, really views themselves as a pillar of the community, as good neighbors. And so it seemed important that those of us who are supposedly the recipients of their goodwill show up and really show them what their actions mean to us. We tried to find, it's funny, you said at the beginning, that I'm kind of at the center of all of this. And that was never something I set out to do.
I figured you were silently bristling over there because you don't want to have the spotlight on yourself. I understand this isn't about you, but this is something that you started.
Yeah, and it was really out of necessity. We tried to find other organizations that were organizing on this issue. We talked to some elected officials. I remember asking Jason Hoskins, our state representative, I said, who's leading on this? I want to follow. I want to, be part of it. And this was after we had that first meeting in our living room, and we had been to city council. And he said, I think it's you, but we don't know of anyone else who's, really leading on this from a community standpoint.
So that then seemed to inject more mission into your cause. What exactly is your cause? What are you trying to accomplish? What are the goals here?
Yeah, the main goal is really simple. We want Redico to cancel the lease. We want them to stop renting space to ICE's lawyers, to the people who prosecute children for the simple crime of being in the only home they've ever known, and the people who decide how large those children's cages can be, who defend the detention of them for way longer than, no child should ever be detained, incarcerated, let alone much longer than what has previously been considered an acceptable amount of time. And the lawyers who are doing that work, who are enabling that, they cannot be working out of our peaceful community. Frankly, they shouldn't be working out of anywhere. But what we want is we want Redico to cancel the lease. And this isn't an unreasonable ask. It's been done before. There was a big success recently with Avelo, the airline. I was reading about this last night and just getting so much inspiration from the bravery not only of the advocates who worked so hard for this to happen, but frankly, and I'm speaking to Redico when I say it takes bravery on the part of the companies, and we'd like Redico to be brave.
Tell me what you read about Avelo that was striking to you and the airline stopping deportation flights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there was a statement from the CEO in an email that he had sent to, I think it was sent to employees, and then shared with the media. And he said that they had entered into this contract because essentially, a government contract is good, secure money. He didn't say it in exactly those terms. But then they ended up stuck in the middle of a political controversy. And I read those words and I just thought, I can see this for Redico. I can see this happening here. I can see this as a path to victory, and to the lease being canceled, because they just need to realize that it's not worth it.
And when you say political controversy, and this is what the leader of Avelo Airlines is saying, it sounds to me what he's really saying is we faced a lot of pressure. We faced a lot of public pressure. It's not necessarily controversy. It's that all of a sudden people started paying attention and they faced the kind of pressure that you see as being successful that you're trying to apply on Redico. And so I just want to be clear about something, though, because there are people who might say, hey, I'm against this kind of aggressive and violent immigration enforcement that we're seeing. I'm against the agents on the street, but this is just a law office. And you're saying, well, it's part of the apparatus.
Yeah.
And that's why you're trying to hit that apparatus wherever you can in terms of breaking it down.
Yeah, I mean, look, I grew up here in Metro Detroit. I grew up going to Temple Israel as a kid, where obviously, there was a horrific attack this week, and that community is so important to who I am today. And one of the things that really shaped me about that experience was the really comprehensive Holocaust education that we received starting from a pretty young age. And one of the things that you learn about when you learn about the Holocaust is that regimes that are committing atrocities, they're not propped up only by the people who are actually pulling the triggers or handcuffing the people on the streets. There's a whole bureaucratic system that's required for these types of regimes to emerge and to be sustained. And so while I have so much respect and appreciation for other community members who are doing great work to try and stop the detention centers, and for people who are working to combat the violence of ICE on the streets, I think it's also very important that we recognize the role that these bureaucratic structures play, and that we address that as well.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. My guest is Lauren Fink. She co-founded the Southfield Neighbors Action Committee after federal lawyers for ICE leased office space 5 minutes from her home. We're talking about what happens when a neighborhood decides to push back and what it means to show up for your neighbors when your own community is under threat. And Lauren, I want to stay on the topic of the education that you got going to Temple, Israel. You told me that as a kid, learning about the Holocaust, you became fixated on a group of people that you called the neighbors.
Yeah.
Who were the neighbors?
Yeah, I think, it was honestly kind of an obsession. I wrote bad poetry about it. If my brother is listening to this, I don't know if he remembers that, but it was kind of embarrassing. But I had this, also very dark and sad. And that's just kind of how Jewish humor is and how we process things, right? I'm laughing at this kind of horrifying thing from my childhood.
You did tell me a joke.
I did. Yes. I told you, we were talking about anxiety.
Yeah.
And you asked me, I said something about Jewish mom anxiety and you asked me where it comes from. And I said, we kind of have this joke that, those of us who are still here, those of us Jews who are still here are here because somebody left at some point. The vibes were off and somebody left. And, so, we have those genes, or somebody survived something horrible, right? That's it's intergenerational trauma. It's not a joke. It's very serious, but joking helps us get through it.
Sure.
But yeah, so I would have kind of these nightmares about the concentration camps that I was learning about in Hebrew school, and seeing pictures and learning how close the camps were to neighborhoods, and also stories that I would hear in my own family about the neighbors and the non-Jewish neighbors who did not show up for my family during the pogroms. And I had this fixation in part. I think it started when I was younger as sort of like a anger towards them, and as I got older, and especially after I had my own kids, it started to become this sort of fear of that I can really identify with them, and that really scared me. But it's parents want to do what's best for our kids. And my number one priority as a mom is going to be protecting my children and making sure that they are safe and happy. And then there's this real fear that comes up of, what happens when that comes in conflict with my responsibilities as a community member and as a neighbor, as our neighbors are being taken in the streets, separated from their families, and having just absolutely horrifying, frankly, crimes committed against them by agents of the federal government.
So you're trying to navigate this duality, though, of being someone who cares deeply about their neighbors, but also being a mom, being a Jewish mom, having this generational trauma, understanding what it means to be a target, but also wanting to keep your kids safe.
Yeah.
Last Thursday, a man drove a truck through the front doors of Temple, Israel, the synagogue you grew up going to, as you mentioned. More than 100 children were inside the preschool. All of them got out safe. You told me that when you saw the messages on your phone, you were saddened, but you weren't surprised. After the attack, you could have pulled back. You could have said, my family's at risk. I need to focus on keeping us safe. But you didn't. You're continuing to organize on behalf of other people's families. I'm gathering, you did mention this briefly. You see a connection here.
Yeah, I think something that I tell my children is that you only get to be brave if you're scared. Doing something that you're not afraid of Even if other people might think it's kind of scary, that's great, but that's not really bravery. And this is a moment where we really need bravery, and not just from our community members, from companies as well, from Redico, to be brave and cancel the lease. I think it's a difficult thing, especially for a Jewish person, for a Jewish mom, to make these like risk calculations and decide, am I safe enough in this moment to put myself out there? And, like I said, I didn't seek out to be the spokesperson of SNAC, the Southfield Neighbors Action Committee, to be at the center of anything. But it turned out that's kind of my role in this moment. It's something that I can do. And one of the reasons I can do that is because I am safe right now. And I have to remind myself of that, frankly. I was listening actually on my way here to your interview with Maria Hinojosa, and about the kind of voices going silent.
Yeah, she and I talked about this moment of intensified ICE enforcement, the media machine that ICE has going right now in terms of what it's posting on Instagram and how it's planting people and creating stories to give a certain narration of we're really getting the bad guys. And at the same time, who's going silent in this moment. So please go ahead.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think, you talked about how, many of your sources that you might have talked to in the past, activists, political leaders, aren't picking up the phone anymore. Yeah. I heard that as I'm like driving down here to be on the radio and talk out loud about this work that we're doing, and to, trying to get a local company, Redico, to cancel their lease with ICE's lawyers. And I had a little bit of fear, but also I think pride, knowing the bravery that it takes, but also just recognizing again that, we have to know when we're safe, and we can't censor ourselves out of fear that we're going to be retaliated against if we're in a situation where that's genuinely unlikely to happen.
I want to zoom out for a minute and look a little west at Minneapolis, because what we keep talking about is being a good neighbor and what that means when you feel like your neighbors are under threat. And in Minneapolis, neighbors were outside for weeks in the freezing cold, standing up for one another, trying to protect vulnerable immigrants that were being targeted by ICE. And their efforts seem to be successful. I mean, ICE reportedly has taken a few thousand of its agents off the streets. Why do you think protesters were successful in Minneapolis?
I am so inspired by what I've seen coming out of Minneapolis. And I think I think the persistence has been very important. I think the diversity of tactics that they've tried, and also just the fact that, it's a lot of folks like me, moms, who like really weren't super, activist-y people before. They cared, they paid attention. Maybe, they donated every month to an organization that was, protecting immigrants, but they weren't like out there putting their bodies on the line. And now they are. And they just, folks keep showing up. We also, I had the opportunity to learn from my rabbi, Alana Alpert, who went on a delegation to Minneapolis, a clergy delegation. She came back, and one of her teachings was that, we all kind of need to find humility about what our place is in this moment. And I think that's something that's been very successful in Minneapolis, is that, folks have recognized what they can contribute what their particular, talents or connections or abilities are, and they're showing up in that way, and they're doing it humbly. I had a funny conversation with my dad about this because I was telling him again. I mean, I didn't seek out to be the spokesperson of SNAC, and I was talking about humility, and he said, yeah, and you need to be humble about the fact that right now your role is front and center, and the opportunity to share. I know it's a compelling story about starting this in our neighborhood. I think people relate to it. They relate to me and my husband, doing this together with our kids. Just out here trying to be good neighbors. And if, my role right now is to, come on the radio and talk about it and share my story while also repeating that Redico needs to cancel the lease with ICE, then that's my role in this moment. And I'm going to step into it and try and do it humbly.
Lauren Fink, a Southfield neighbor, she co-founded the Southfield Neighbors Action Committee. Lauren, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Robyn, Vincent. Coming up, the Trump administration has made it a priority to remove immigrants from this country, and to do so in a big and flashy way. And in the process, he has us wondering, what does it mean to be a citizen of this country? We'll answer that next here on the Metro. Stay with us.